Well, I guess first I'll invite you guys all to the Armchair Traveler Series, and we have a few more coming up. And the schedule will be posted on the library website and on their Facebook and stuff like that. And I'll send out reminders to people. So Michael grew up in Northwest Washington, where he studied glaciology at the University of Washington when he wasn't climbing and sailing. He moved to Alaska in 2020, just in time for the landslide. He lives out on Beach Road. He is now retired and still enjoys hiking, skiing, and boating. He has traveled extensively, including 3 trips to Antarctica and 2 trips to Tibet. I think Michael is a very interesting guy. I've met him with his interest in geology about the Beach Road things, and I think we should let Michael speak.
Okay, did you want to speak or?
Oh, I just let's do the quick admin things. Everyone who's coming into the room now, into the Zoom, you are muted. Please keep that mute on until the very end. If you have questions that pop up along the way, just type them in the chat and Mike will get to them at the end. Yeah, Cindy kind of covered everything else. But again, if you ever have a program you want to do, everyone here and behind me as well, please let me know, 766-6422, or you can email education@hayneslibrary.org. I know we got a lot of other things coming up. Patty Brown has a program coming up next week, I believe, about the state of the border. And then Burl Sheldon has a really interesting one coming up about your health and sugars and starches and whatnot. So we're doing programs all the time. So please keep your eyes and ears out, and hopefully you enjoy the rest of this presentation. And do you want these lights down?
Don't ask me.
Can everyone see, or would you like the lights down a little bit?
Lights.
This is where we hide them.
Yeah, they're just, that one's great.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I sort of have to face 2 directions, or I don't know how to do this. Anyway, so my presentation is basically on 2 trips that we took to Tibet. And the first one was in 2010, and that inspired us to go back. And the second trip was in 2018. So I will start with the 2010 trip, and basically I've got a PowerPoint.
And you're off to the races. You got hits here, escape button there. Okay.
So here we go. And do you have any way of testing the sound? I mean, I assume people can hear me okay.
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, if you can't hear me, speak up, unmute yourself for a second, give a yell. Okay, so Tibet. So the reason for this trip initially, way back, was my son was teaching English in China. So we decided we had to go visit him, make sure he wasn't causing too much trouble, basically. And so we went to where he was teaching English in China, which is a Jiaozhou, which probably no one's heard of. It's a small Chinese city, 1 million people. And here's some of the kids. But since we were there, we were like, I really always wanted to go to Tibet. And as you're probably aware, Tibet was essentially taken over by China in 1950. So you go to quote unquote China if you want to go to Tibet. So we decided to take the train. The Chinese built a train to the capital city, Lhasa of Tibet. You have to go with a guide. That didn't used to be the case, but now you have to. And this train's a major engineering feat. This railway station is approximately 17,000 feet of elevation. So they tell us, and interesting, there's still people smoking. So anyway, that's kind of interesting. So we got to Lhasa, okay? And our guide, Namjul, is on the, I guess, the right, hopefully it's your right. And Helen's on the left. And one thing you're going to see here is a lot of Chinese military presence. I didn't take any pictures of the Chinese military, promise. Okay, so whatever. Anyway, this is the train station. It's all modern architecture, and there's a real contrast here between the new stuff and the old stuff. Obviously, lots of the old stuff is quite old, and the new stuff looks like new stuff. So, for example, here, and I guess I don't have any good way to point. In the middle of the picture is the big palace, the Potala, and you can obviously see the more modern buildings in front. So this is taken from up the hillside a little bit. So you can tour this. This was the residence of the Dalai Lama. So that's quite the house, so to speak. So to be fair, there is a little bit of justification for saying maybe it wasn't the best setup in the world when the, essentially the Dalai Lama was like the head of Tibet, if you will, because he had a pretty good setup here, okay? But there's a lot of unhappiness with what the Chinese did, and you can make what you will of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. We did not tour this because you have to pay to tour it, and all the money goes to the Chinese government. If it's not for Tibetan people, we would have happily toured it, but we hiked around it. And just another picture of, who knows what they're up to there, some industrial assignment. So this is a Kora, which is essentially a religious Buddhist circumambulation. And these people are going clockwise around the Jokan temple, which you can't see, it's in the middle to the right. And this is one of the big things in Tibetan Buddhism is making Koras. This is just a little one. It takes, maybe 20 minutes, if that. And they celebrate by, burning incense and all. I don't know exactly what the, significance of this particular incense being burned was, but this happens, and you can see all the prayer flags up on the buildings there and so forth and so on. And the really devout people, and I got to jump ahead on the Kailash circumambulation or Kora. There's people that do this prostration all the way around that mountain. They do this for 32 miles. Yeah. So I did get a picture here of this person prostrating. He was just going around the Jokan, which I don't know how long that would take him, maybe 6 hours. I don't know. It's not very far, a mile, less than a mile. And like I said, I didn't take any pictures of these guys. But especially because of those guys, we decided we wanted to get out of Lhasa. So we decided to go up to a monastery, which is up the hill here. Okay. And once we got out of Lhasa, our guide opened up. We had a couple of guys, Lumbum was another guy we have, that's his name. And once we got out of Lhasa, they started to talk, and he said that a couple million people had been killed by the Chinese. He used to be a monk, or he wasn't a monk, but he was raised in a monastery. So there's a lot of bad stuff. And again, I can't tell you the truth of everything. I just tell you what they told us. So we had lunch up in this monastery. Went hiked around. We're at about 12,000 feet of elevation here. Our guides were very impressed that we could walk around 12,000 feet, by the way. They expected us to collapse. And here we are back in Lhasa, and we also did a little Kora around that Potala Palace, which takes maybe 2 hours. And there's all these prayer wheels that you spin, and the prayers are written on paper inside. And this is kind of cheating. It's like to pray, all you have to do is spin this thing and it sends all the prayers out. It's like pray, right? And that's, by the way, what prayer flags do too. They blow in the wind, and it's like automatic praying. You watch a TV and your prayers are going off. So pretty economical or something. So the last thing we did in Lhasa is, and this, I don't know how they arranged this, but our guides really liked this because they could tell we were kind of supporting them. They arranged us to teach for an afternoon to a class of nomads. So these are basically nomad kids, and they're trying to assimilate them into mainstream city culture. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I'd say mixed. But it was really interesting, and they let us say whatever we wanted to say, and I don't know how they got away with this. Because we were like, we hope you guys get freedom. And I was expecting the guards bust down the door or something, but nothing happened. So anyway, that was pretty interesting. This was the highlight of the trip right here. And as you can see, we still saw the military, so we finally got out of there, to be honest. We took off. And on our way back, we decided to go to this mountain, Anye. And this is essentially in what used to be Tibet. Now it's in China, but it used to be Tibet. And this is a holy mountain. And people used to circumambulate this mountain. It doesn't really happen much anymore. The whole thing's kind of been shut down. but you can drive and hike around it. And so we hired a guide and well, technically we had a guide and a driver. And the guide is the woman there, what's her name? Forgot her name. And that's our driver standing up and basically just went places. And back in 2010, you could kind of do that. So we found a glacier. I had to do that because I studied glaciers.
Did they speak English, your guides?
It varies. Those two did, and I feel really bad. So I'm going to cheat here. Zhangbu is the woman. Okay. And by the way, she's Tibetan. The driver was Chinese. And the individual Chinese are, decent people. But there's very, like everybody, they're for liberals and conservatives or whatever, just like the United States. So you get what you get. But she was fine. She didn't really do much, to be honest. She just happened to be there. We had to have her, so we did. And here, Maggie, that's my wife, is talking to a nomad. I have no idea what this guy's name was. He didn't speak English, and I don't speak Tibetan. But we just found this guy and, basically shared lunch with him. And the guy, Zhangmu could talk to him. And this is near Anyamachin. You can see big glaciers in the background there. And then just because we decided to hike up the local one, which is 16,500, maybe pretty high. And you can see Maggie's like a little tired there.
You're getting a little short of air there.
Yeah. And Zhangmu didn't want to do this. She's like, whatever. So off we went. And there she is on top, looking better. And you can actually see Anyamachin sort of, not really, but sort of in the background. I didn't take a picture of it, but there was all these little carved tablets on top. So presumably prayers. There we are, Anyamachin in the background, better view of it. Another view. And then the last thing we did on this trip is we talked our driver, said, we're going to stay in a hotel, right? That's where he always stays. But we don't want to stay in a hotel. We want to stay with a family. And he's like, oh, crap. So, but he found these two ladies, don't know their names. So they're Zhangmu's on the very left and Maggie's, with the blue fleece. So you can pretty well tell who the Tibetans are. And so that's the grandmother and the mother. And they let us camp in their yard. And it was pretty interesting. No language in common whatsoever. But we did a lot of pointing and talking, and they wanted to see George Washington. And then it occurred to me, I don't know if this is what they were after. George Washington's on a $1 bill. So I gave a $1 bill and they were really happy. And then I had some oranges. So they were really happy when I gave them oranges. And they gave us samba and tea and Tibetan food. Pretty fun. And here's looking at this is where they live with their, I don't know honestly what they do for a living. I mean, they didn't really have a lot of yaks or anything, right? So anyway, that was pretty much the end of our trip. So we decided in 2018, I wanted to go to Mount Kailash. And honestly, I'm amazed that this worked. Because logistically, getting this trip arranged, you're trying to go to the middle of Tibet. But the Chinese have cracked down on, all the security and stuff. And I didn't think it was going to happen. I really didn't. But somehow we made it work. And we found a guy in Switzerland. He runs sort of I don't know what you call it. He facilitates trips, basically. He hires guides that you have the guides. And our official guide was actually Russian, no less. Don't ask me. But he made this work, and my hat is off to him. So we flew to Lhasa again. But before that, we had to go through Nepal. And so I got a few pictures of Nepal. That's Kathmandu. So, and Nepal's like crazy. It's not organized. It's like they all drive like maniacs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the people are really nice. And basically, I like it better than China by a fair bit, even though it's, chaos, as you can see. So we decided to acclimatize while we were there. So we found the local lump, which was 9,000 feet high. That's as high as anything was. And we decided to hike up it. I don't have any pictures of this, but there was 4 dogs. You can see 2 of them in this picture that followed us on this whole hike. They just, you know, whatever, they wanted to go hiking. And it ended up, the hike went through this massive field of leeches, which was horrible. And the dogs, like the dogs would get them and they'd like bite them out from their toes because the leeches would be sucking the blood. And it was, anyways, kind of disgusting. So here we are hiking and lots of prayer flags. And basically this was to acclimatize. And we did this for a few days and then we took off for Mount Kailash by going through Lhasa. There's our official passport. And they did a lot of, or visa, excuse me. They did a lot of checking of passports and just like every half an hour in Chinese like passports. And then they come back half hour later. It's like, I don't know what they were doing. Anyway, got through all that stuff and got to Lhasa and went to, it should be Samye, but I better check that. Yes. Got it. Okay. I don't want to get mixed up with Sakya. So we decided to, guess what, acclimatize some more, another monastery. So here's some pictures of that. And then we hiked up the hill, another monastery picture. So then we hiked up the hill got to about 15,000 feet. So those were getting higher. And here's a picture of me with a couple of people hiking around. No idea who these people were. They want their picture taken, so took their picture. And you can see the town down in the valley there. And, you know, everywhere in Tibet, there's prayer flags, like everywhere anybody can get to. In some places, I don't know how they get to. So after that, we went to Sakya. And I think I made a mistake there. I don't think that person was Samye, sorry. And here's just a picture of driving. And here's what the place looks like. And here's the entrance to the monastery. And it's interesting. So some people were wearing face masks. It reminds me of COVID. This is way before COVID. This is 2018. And these are, obviously that's a Buddha, but on the left, those are books. And you might have noticed in the previous couple slides back, there was monks were reading these books. Okay, and there's thousands of these things. Those are all, and I have no idea how old they are. And usually they wouldn't let you take pictures, but for some reason here they decided it was okay. I don't know why.
Each
So-
of those is a book.
Yeah, and they're long pages. I don't know if I should try.
I remember the picture you had where he was reading the long pages.
So it's not like a scroll
There,
though. is it?
Yeah, they're there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're to read them. And it's in Tibetan and anyway, I found it amazing. And I bet these things are really old. And then they have these statues and they have, one thing I actually don't like about Tibetan Buddhism is they have this huge, you know, all this stuff, you know, all these gods and, you know, weird, scary things and hells and all sorts of stuff. And it's way too complicated for me. Anyway, you know, don't want to tangle with this guy. And don't know what that is, but it's pretty cool. And let's take a picture of it. And then Baggy found this stairway going up to the top of the building. So here we are going up the stairway. It was kind of steep. And there we are on top, and all the monks are hanging out. And there's no, it doesn't really show, but behind her, there's basically like a 40-foot drop. There's no guardrails or anything. So I just watch your step, I guess. And we continued after that, driving towards Mount Kailash. And we stopped for lunch, don't remember the name of this place. And here's some local kids. And this kid, I hope you can see it. I don't know how the sharing's working. Yeah, you can't see it. I'll check out there. That's my, you know, the people see. And it says boy meets girl, I think. Yeah, boy meets girl, is what his hat says. Is there any way to turn?
Hit the X on the right
Yeah.
side.
That would be a good idea, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
That makes more sense. It isn't going out to the participants that are on Zoom. Okay, so that's better for you guys here. Okay, so this gets interesting. This thing stuff. Oh, well, so we drove further, and a lot of the scenery is just like this. There it goes. And some of it's like this. And that mountain there, I don't know what it is, but it's about 25,000 feet high. It's a big mountain. So we're getting, we're getting some serious elevation. We're about 14,000 feet there driving. And there's our first view of Mount Kailash. So that's essentially the south side of Mount Kailash. And Mount Kailash is about 22,500 feet high. And it has never been climbed. It's not that you couldn't climb it, because of course you could, or maybe we can't, but somebody could. But it's a holy mountain, and the Chinese, just to mess things up, actually tried to get some Europeans to climb it. The Europeans said, no, it's a holy mountain, we're not going to climb it. Like Reinhold Messner, you might have heard of him. And he turned it down and said, I'm not going to do it. So it hasn't been climbed so far as I know. So the driving, the whole reason for the second trip was to do a Cora around Mount Kailash. And there's a map, obviously, and the Cora you can see, I guess they can't see it on the screen. Let's see if I can show them on there, so there's nothing I can do. So anyway, you start down at the bottom of the screen at Darshan, and you go clockwise around Mount Kailash. If you're a Buddhist, if you're a Hindu, you also go clockwise. It's a holy mountain for Hindus also. If you're the Bon religion, which is a really old religion, go anti-clockwise. And if you're the Jain religion, this mountain's really holy, you also go anti-clockwise. So most people are Buddhists or Hindus and they're going clockwise, but we met people going the other way. And you can see the height, 6,700 meters. And the monasteries or towns or whatever are the orange things. And then there's sort of smaller monasteries, which are, like this Chukagampa, it's kind of a monastery, not really. There's an inner core, which we didn't do, which is down at the bottom there, the dotted lines, the dashed lines, the trip we took. Okay. So here now we're finally going to see, the start of the Cora. And this was pretty funny because Maggie and me decided we wanted to camp. Most people stay at the guest houses, but they're kind of noisy and smoky and whatever. So we're like, okay, we're just going to camp. So we had a couple of sleeping bags and a little tent. And they told us we could hire porters. And we're like, well, okay, why not support the local economy? We had this pack that weighed about 20 pounds, so it wasn't very heavy. And the other people we were with mostly had way more stuff. I don't know what they had. So we laid out all our packs, and this guy on the left here, Sonam, he was smart. He sees all the packs. So he's like, okay, this one looks the lightest. So yeah, that's like 20 pounds, no problem.
I think these people.
Yeah, he's like, I'm going with these guys because he didn't speak English. So he's just like pointing. We're like, sure. Okay. And it turned out this was a gigantic stroke of luck because this guy was better than any guy. I mean, frankly, our guys, we basically never saw them on this thing. They just, whatever. So, but he totally, knew where everything was, even though he didn't speak English. And he stuck to Maggie like glue because, she was worried about the elevation. And, we basically gave him a mammoth tip at the end of the trip. So, and he was, he's a cool guy. And he took these prayer beads everywhere. So I'm not a Buddhist, but I guess it's kind of like a rosary. You just, you count them or read them or something. Okay. So this was, he was so cool. And just FYI, that's Federico. He's one of our guys there and on the right. And Karen's in the middle, kind of sitting down. She's one of our guys too. And I don't know who's at the pack there. I can't tell. Anyway, And then a couple, I think that guy was a porter in the middle. So this is a darshan where where we stayed the night, and we actually did sleep inside her because there's no other place to camp. And this is a typical breakfast that they give to the tourists, us, which is basically, you know, flat bread or tortillas or whatever, hard-boiled eggs and milk tea. But I didn't take a picture, but we actually ate with the monks, and there's a lot of things I did not take pictures of. It just didn't seem, you know, not cool. And that was, you know, it's sampa. It's basically ground up roasted barley. And then you have butter tea, which is sort of sultry, buttery, thick tea. And I think it's pretty good. Okay. But you get the, you know, the American breakfast or whatever also, which is also good, obviously. So there's the monks in the background. That's actually, those are the guys we eat breakfast with. So here we are starting out. And the obligatory dog. And the dogs are, you know, there's one bunch of dogs that wasn't very friendly, but mostly they're real nice. And we're at about 15,000 feet here. And the Chinese have actually made a road most of the way around this, which is pretty annoying. There's one part they couldn't make a road, which is just fine with me. But we were good or whatever. And we were, you know, we walked the whole time. No way we're going to ride or whatever. And you can see a truck, and if you look closely on the kind of middle right there, there's a truck. So this is a tea tent, and there's several of these along the way. This is by that below that first Gompa, which is up the hill to the left, which we didn't go up to. And you can see Maggie and Sonam. You see the striped pack, that's him. So there's a couple of our people. And then if you look carefully in the middle, you'll see a lady on a horse wearing a mask. And a lot of people come up here and they don't acclimatize, especially from India. You know, they live at like 500 feet above sea level. They zip up here to do this core because it's holy for Tibetans and it's holy for Hindus, and they're also Hindus. And some of them even die. I'm serious.
Oh, yeah, it's
Yeah.
16,000 feet.
Yeah.
If you come from sea level, you could die.
Yeah. And so she was pretty sick, and they're carting her on a horse. And so far as I know, she made it. But it's, you know, we were fine. We had fine with it, but it's not, you know, you got to think a little bit here. Maggie actually took some Diamox a couple times. That's kind of I don't know what it does. It makes your blood work better or something. But these horses are pretty cool. So this was actually taken by Kimberly, and I'll get a picture of this earlier on. So here you can actually see some prayer flags on the ground. There are prayer flags everywhere. It's the battlements of Mount Kailash. This is the west side of Mount Kailash. That first picture was the south side. And walking up the road, there's Maggie and Sonam, and there's some look like sheep. I don't know.
In the background.
Yeah. There's usually yaks. That's weird. I never even noticed that. I was too busy, I guess. Oh well. And so here's our tent, and this is at it's called Durapak. I'm guarantee I'm mispronouncing that. So this was our first campsite. And this is at about 16,300 feet. And the reason this is interesting to me is I have read that people can't live permanently above about 15,000 feet. These people live here. So don't ask me. I mean, Tibetans clearly have better lungs, and I guess it works.
So there's a village above 15,000?
Well, it's a monastery.
Oh,
I wouldn't really call it a village. The monastery, it's pretty much the monastery, and then there's kind of some subsidiary places for trekkers and so forth. But there's not like stores and, you know, houses regular. It's not like a village. But they live there. And so now I love this picture of this guy. He was happily helping us put it up the tent. You got to pound it in the tent guys there. And these are trekkers or people doing the Korah. And a lot of the Tibetans, I don't know if a lot, but some of the Tibetans, it's 32 miles, 50 kilometers. They do this thing in one day. Now, I don't think these ladies did, but some of them do. And like I said, some people prostrate around this thing, which I think takes about 3 weeks.
When you prostrate, do you have to stay down?
No, I'll probably throw my back up if I show you. You stand up and they have these pads on their knees and on their forearms, right? And they go down on their knees and then they go like that. And then I think you get up, you kind of see, I made 6 feet of progress.
Okay,
Yeah, something like
okay,
that.
so 6 feet at a time.
Yeah, and I could probably do that for about 50 feet.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
anyway, pretty amazing. And these ladies like, whatever, we're at 16,000 feet, we're having a good time. So here's, more from a distance, I don't know, the same ways, or not even sure, but anyway. So this is at the Tirupuk, and they, you can get food here, you actually have to buy it, it's really cheap. And they're really big on tea, those are all thermoses of tea. And honestly, I don't know if they were on milk tea or butter tea, I think it might have been milk tea. So we decided the next day we had an extra day. So it normally takes 3 days for tourists. And we had an extra day, so we decided to go to the north face of Kailash. And so nobody was up there. So that was pretty, and this was actually the place I most wanted to go. So off we went, and Sonam, he's just said, I'm going with you, and then he wanted to carry everything, of course, and we're like, forget it, dude. So we carried our stuff, and he carried the ski poles or whatever, what's going on. And that's Sophie, by the way, she's one of the people in our group, the person closest to the camera, and Maggie's in the middle, and Sonam's first to play. So off we went up to the north face, and it's obviously glacial rain. There's Maggie, Sonam, and Sophie. Same, different arrangement. So we got up to this glacier, which you can see there, and this is all, for anybody into geology, this is all ice core moraine. You can see the ice under the rock here. So, excuse me, so it's virtually impossible to travel on because you step on the rocks, they'll slide on the ice. So nothing's fastened together. But you could go up the glacier to that north face. Now, I was going to climb Mount Kailash, I would not go up there. So anyway, it's pretty impressive. And it's super religious, holy, but nobody was up there. So a picture of the glacier. And then you can't really see it, but Sonam and Maggie, and we set some prayer flags on a stick that we found up there behind Sonam, and pretending we were getting rid of our sins. We were honoring, actually what we were doing is honoring some deceased people. So that's actually why I went up there. Anyway, there's my son and Maggie. We are going back down. So now you can see, so that we were up to probably 18,000 feet, that last picture. So that's about 18,000, maybe a little less. Yeah. But you get used to it. It's really not bad.
I lived at 9,000 feet for a while.
Oh, you got no problem. You can just stop for one, no problem. So here's the Tirupuk monastery from
Yeah,
So here's the monastery from a distance. So you see it's kind of a cool building. And you can see there's some other stuff, but not a whole. Okay. Oh, there's a horse on the left. Never noticed that. And our tent. Yeah, I don't know if it's in that picture or not. I'm not picking that. I think it's right. I think it's out of view to the left. Anyway, so then Natalia, who's our official guide from Russia, arranged, and Kelsang was our Chinese. You had to have a Chinese guy on, but he was a really good guy. So he was actually awesome. They didn't do much with us, but they did arrange for us to have a session or whatever you call it, the head guy there at the monastery. And I did not take pictures of that, obviously, but it was really interesting. He blessed us, and then they gave us a little bag of this little thing. It's just random stuff, kind of like stocking stuffers. But he did say, he told us, he said, well, the Chinese, if you can see the Chinese flag, you have to have a Chinese flag or else it disappeared probably. He said the Chinese have made it materially much better than things used to be. But he basically said spiritually it was terrible. So he wasn't happy. And
How long has this monastery been there?
I do not know. Yeah, there's a whole lot I don't know.
Look at the stones and the structure and say 500,000, 2,000 years.
Yeah, truthfully, I wasn't getting tangled up in numbers or names or history or even the formalism of Tibetan Buddhism. A lot of people were into that, you're supposed to do certain things, certain places, and this god did that, and whatever. I'm like, I'm just gonna be here. So most of these pictures are mine, for whatever that's worth. A few of them aren't. But yeah, good point. This thing isn't new. Yeah, that would actually be really interesting. Was it rebuilt after the Cultural Revolution? Did it get torn down by the whatever they call those guys?
Chairman Mao and the company.
Yeah, it does that. I mean, it looks old. The lions look pretty new.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
steps, walls.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you could spend, I mean, truthfully, when I was done with this corner, I just wanted to do it again. But I figured out, so the timing was, I'm getting older, relations with China are going to hell. It's good we did it when we did.
Yes.
Although supposedly, the guy's name is Roger Pfister, the Swiss guy. Supposedly he's still running trips. I don't know. Anyway, so here we are. This is going down the steps. So in between there, we were inside talking down and so forth. So the next day, so day 2 of the core of it, day 3 of our trip, we go over the Dolma, however you pronounce it, which is the high point of the trip. Nobody really seems to know how high it is. There's the backs are terrible. My altimeter said it was, I believe, 18,556 feet. So it's literally the high point. And we wanted to start late, but Sonam said we had to go early. And Maggie she was going to listen to this guy. He's a local guy. So off we went. We were definitely the first guys up. It's pretty dark. Okay. So up we go, and there's just basically a lot of up. And the yaks are still here. So Maggie's pretty happy. And you can see it's getting lighter. There's actually a trail that goes up that pass in the back, but that's not the way we're supposed to go. So we go the way we went. And the higher you get, the more prayer flags you are, and everything was frozen up there. It hadn't snowed recently, but it was pretty icy. And this is just, it's just really cool. That's all I can say.
The dedication of people.
Yeah. Like somebody strings these all, and they have to keep maintaining them because the weather is going to be, they're going to last very long. If you look on the ground, you can see old ones and stuff. And I had to laugh here that, was Maggie tired? I don't think so, but she had her on his shots. Then I saw this little bird. Does anybody want to follow this? I don't know what this bird is. But this bird is literally at 18,000 feet. It's freezing cold. And for scale, that bird's maybe 4 inches long. It's not a very big bird. Anyway, it looked very fuzzy and inflated, like people, I guess. So that's pretty cool. And here we are, we're almost there, and Maggie has her eyes shut still. Not really, but that's the way we've got the pictures.
Were you prepared for the cold, Michael? Did you know it was going to be really cold at 1 o'clock?
Yeah, no, we had essentially, Maggie had a little trouble breathing the previous night. I don't know if you guys have slept at elevation, but there's this really weird thing we used to call it Shane Stokes, where you don't breathe enough, so you're just like, You're not getting a fair also. Like that. You wake up and like, what? It's very annoying for both the person that's doing it and the person that's sleeping in the tent with them. And then that got me a couple nights later after we had lower elevation. So, but we didn't have trouble with the cold. It's, you know, it's 20 degrees, maybe it's not that cold. That's not like climbing Mount Everest or something. So the higher you get, the more prayer flags there are. The low point is actually to the right, and I think because of the snow, you know, the snow situation, ice, they built the trail off to the left here a little bit. So it's gorgeous, obviously. There we are. And we met some people, her eyes shut, no, her eyes are open. So we met a couple of guys coming the other way who were Chinese, to give credit. They were going the wrong way, but maybe they were Bone or Jane or something. And so I actually hung out for a while and talked to them. Betty wanted to get down. She was like, I don't know, this is kind of scary. What did it say? 18,564 feet. She's like, run out of there. So Sohan took her down the hill towards this lake, and I talked to these Chinese guys a little bit. They did speak English. And then headed down. And there's Sophie. This picture was actually taken a little later, but I wanted to give her credit. And so I did not take a picture of it, but we stopped for lunch partway down the other side on this sort of rocky slope. I had a great lunch with Sohan. It was interesting. Some of the stuff, he was vegetarian. Was he? Loved the dried apples, but he wouldn't eat chocolate. So some of our food he liked. We fed him lunch. So yeah, he got an easy trip out of this. But it was totally worth it because he knew so much. And he was like, he was a guide. He wasn't a porter, he was a guide. So there he is chatting up the local ladies. So it's a little bit anticlimactic hiking out after the Doma. Oh, that's Kimberly on the right. She's one of our people. So she's showing her camera to this local person. So here we're at about 15,500, maybe 16,000. We're a little lower. And we stayed in a monastery. Here's a little kid. This kid lives here. And 15,500 feet. And there, this is when somebody was talking about the prayer flags. Somehow they sprung the prayer flags across that Grand Canyon thing. So, and somebody carves all these stones. And there's a lot more of them, lots of places. I just got this one picture here. And got back to Darshan and had I guess a good meal. It's potatoes and mystery meat. Probably, yeah. I don't normally eat meat, but I was like, whatever, eat what the locals eat. So there we were. And like I said, I wanted to do the Cora again. I mean, I didn't try to make it happen, but that's, if I had my way, I would have just done it again. Why not? So, and this is, if you believe that, if you do this, go over this line, do the right stuff, all your sins are washed away and you go to Nirvana, all sorts of good stuff. Anyway, it didn't happen, but
Nirvana is being out there on that trail.
There you go. Yeah. So we did, however, do another Cora, which is around Lake Manasarabar. That's what the official itinerary was. Like, okay. This is one of the highest lakes in the world. It's at 14,500 feet roughly, and it's 70 miles. Running down 68 miles around this lake. But we're in good shape, I guess, so whatever. So this did take 4 days. And maybe actually cheated and rode in the truck for 10 miles. But you could walk around this lake. So there it is. And I'm gonna just go through this real quick because I'm a little short of time. And actually the pictures aren't that good. But again, we took 4 days. So here's a good, I got a few people pictures here just to give people credit, so to speak. So that's the lake, that's Kelsang, our Chinese guide on the left. That's Federico Hughes from Italy, one of our people, Karin. And then Natalia, who's our Russian guide. And I was a good scholar, I'd study all this stuff, but I was there just to be there. Found this in a cave, I don't know what these mean. It's a cave full of this, these little carvings, castings, and pottery, they got it. At this monastery, I wish I cheated, there was a monk drawing. And it's some of the best music I've ever heard. In fact, it probably is the best. And I wish I made a recording, but of course I didn't. It was astounding. It was a little sad. It was one monk and one Chinese official. That's the only people in this monastery, other than people passing through like us. And camped. So there's Maggie. Kimberly took this picture. Kelsang. And there was an interesting and sort of annoying thing here. The guides did not actually know how to get around the slide. And Maggie and me have kayak guided for years, and we ended up taking over the trip for half a day and saying, here's where we're going. Here's how we're getting through here. Come follow us. So it was interesting, to say the least. And here's this, there is a road around the lake, which so this truck carried all the luggage, but I didn't actually take this picture because I was ahead of these guys, but you got stuck and you had to wait for a bigger truck to come. So anyway, so basically this lake we just tromped around for 4 days. Story here, yes, of course we had to go swimming. It turns out they changed the rules and nobody told us you were no longer allowed to swim. Maggie and me did not get caught, but the next two people who went swimming did and got in a whole lot of trouble. So we're wondering if they would, get locked up or something. Yeah.
What is the temperature of this lake?
About what it looks like.
Okay.
Okay, so like I said, I didn't have many pictures of that, and just briefly, I've got a few pictures going back from Darshan essentially to Nepal. And this is when we got back to Nepal. We barely got through the border because the Chinese wanted publicity pictures of us, but the Nepalese were going to go home. We're trying to go from China to Nepal. And by the time the Chinese took the publicity pictures, which were totally staged, and we didn't want our pictures taken, but we were like, we probably better cooperate to the border guards. The Nepalese had closed the border, but I think it was Kelsang. I suspect he gave them their money to open the border. Anyway, that was interesting. So this is back in Nepal. And I don't know if this will work. I think I'll try it. Nope, it's not gonna work. Should work. Anyway, this is a video. I'm gonna try it. I want to see what happens. Yeah, it's just not gonna work. Oh well.
You have a video of driving this road.
Yes. I know how to play it on my computer, but I don't see any way to play it on theirs. Okay, well, that's okay. We don't have time anyway. So basically it's a rock road. And you can't see it, but a dog kept ahead of us quite easily. Good. And you want to stay on the road. Oh, yeah, that's like 3,000 feet down. Goodness. And the village is just kind of perched on the hillside. So you've probably all seen these typical pictures of Nepal, these villages, giant hills and giant chieftains. Rice paddies, we're getting back to civilization. And I want to say this is how, I don't know, if landslides should actually be done this way, but if you look at the very middle of the picture. Essentially, that's a dirt hill, it's a landslide, you can see that's gotta be at least a 60-degree slope, that's way steeper than a landslide here. And this happened the day before, and they just drove a bulldozer across and scooped out our track and said, good luck, see ya.
But it didn't take them 2 years.
Exactly. Now, was it safe? I don't think so. We just kind of held our breath. So there's the steep section. That's just dirt. You know, it's like, that's not a solid road. Anyway, that was interesting. So here we are in the car. We're going back to Kathmandu. This is my last people picture. Again, we got Federico, Natalia, Karen, Sophie. Who's on the right? That's somebody that wasn't on a trip. Because this was sort of a cobbled together fine transportation. We actually, we couldn't get any transport, and so Federico and I forget who was in Sophie and Dee and Maggie, we had a helicopter lined up. We were gonna fly out. We didn't really want to do that. Well, after I saw that landslide, maybe we should have. Anyway, so the happy people going home. And unfortunately, this is really too bad. I can't make this work as a video because this is a video of the flags waving in the wind with sound. Pretty cool. But we'll just have to leave it at that. So I don't see any screens for running the video. Okay. So at this point, I can open this up to questions. And I should check chat here.
Did anybody get like blisters or anything like that you had to have some medical attention or?
Okay, so just a sec. So
I'm
a
sorry.
question here. Gray crowned rosy finch from Patty Brown.
Oh. They were
With a-
intelligent.
with a question mark, so I guess maybe it's a gray crowned rosy finch. Okay, so now your question, blisters.
Blisters or any injuries or anything like that you had to deal with? Because I didn't know if that would be because sometimes altitude and injuries can make healing not work as well either, so.
Not that I can think of. There was Maggie had trouble breathing that one night, the first night at 16,300. I had trouble one night down to still awake at 14,500. So I was fine at 18,000, but 14,000 no. And Federico was altitude sick at the start, but got over it.
But that was it, so no
Yeah,
trauma injuries.
can't think of any. Yeah, nothing. And like I said, it wasn't all that cold. It was maybe 20 degrees. So there wasn't nobody gonna freeze to death. We had pretty good weather. So I've seen videos of people, howling blizzards up at that high pass and stuff like that.
What time are you using?
It's basically the start of July. Yeah, first week of July. Yeah.
Looking at the, we were talking about when things were built, looking at this structures. It reminds me of what houses were built of in a small town I was in Italy, where there were no trees. Everything had to be made out of rocks and put the rocks together, and they even used rocks for the roof.
Yeah, now people are very patient. This is actually Heberite. That's near this. After we got the loss, I started driving. This is the first place we stopped. Yeah, I wish I could put those slides. Here's a question. What was it like driving on the roads? Were there lots of scary moments? Well, that's interesting because you've got to contrast China and Tibet, because Tibet's been subsumed by China. With Nepal. So everything in China is very organized. So China is not very scary. It's kind of like the United States, they close the road, they maintain it, it's paving, it's not just, see you later, bye. Nepal is pretty scary. A lot of the roads are 1.5 lanes wide, which causes trouble, obviously, when cars are going both directions. And in Kathmandu, it's typical crazy driving where it's, lots of honking and you just start kind of pushing for position and not a lot of followable ones. So the driving back through Nepal, the driver was good. I wasn't particularly worried, but if you go off the road, you're dead. You're gonna get about 3,000 feet down the valley. So, or that landslide could have failed. We were really, we were kind of holding our breath on that thing. Okay. Other questions?
Was the Chinese presence primarily in Lhasa?
No, I kind of skipped over that. The first time in Lhasa was really bad. The second time we didn't go to Lhasa at all. But getting through the airport in Lhasa, they took our passports and hauled us into separate rooms, and just they didn't accuse us of anything, but they were just being obnoxious, basically. So it took us I think it took us at least an hour to get through that. And then we were essentially driving from Lhasa to Darchi in Tibet. There'd be a checkpoint maybe every hour. And at first they let us keep our passports and we just had to hand them over to give them back, but then they just checked them. But we didn't have our passports for basically most of the trip. And I think the guides got them. They finally compromised and let the guides keep them, so they were with us, sort of. But they would just stop for a long time. The good news was going around, I guess they don't like the elevation. There was no military presence going around Mount Kailash. So they could get in there on that road they built, but they weren't there. And that was pretty nice that they weren't there. And in Darshan, they weren't there. And even in the monasteries, they weren't there. So Lhasa's where they're, that's where the military presence is. So, other questions?
Michael, this is Cindy. How many people a day do you think were walking around the mountain, and how many months a year can they get around the mountain?
Hold on just a sec, Cindy. Brenda, is there a way to play the video? Couldn't figure out how to normally hit the space bar. To make it go.
This is the video right here.
See if it works. I mean, it's gonna go. Yeah, on the video.
Might be a formatting issue.
It plays when I do the PowerPoint on my laptop. That's all I can say. Anyway, Cindy, can you repeat your question?
Yes, so I'm just wondering how many people are walking around the mountain? Like, how many people? It didn't look like there were many people on the trail. So how many do you think might do it in a day? And how many months of the year can people actually get around the mountain?
Well, of course, like how many people did I see in a day? And I would say maybe 100, but some of them are living there in the tea tents and in the monasteries. So, if you had a gate at the end of the core, I'm guessing you might have 100 people go through it in a day. Maybe less. I don't think it'd be more. I mean, it's. We didn't see on that Doma La, there just weren't many people. I think maybe a lot of them are just hiking in and out for, working on bringing supplies into the tea tents or something. I don't know. But it's not, except for going up to that north face of that Kangjang Glacier. There was people everywhere. But on that day, we saw nobody else, zero. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I was just trying to get an idea about how many people were walking around the mountain.
The timing, yeah, the months. So I tried to sign up for winter. I forget why. I had some logic to it. Probably have less people. And they said they could do it, and then they said no, they couldn't do it. So I think the earliest people go would be like April to October, I'm thinking, sort of.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I just copied it over to the flash drive from the PowerPoint here. It plays in the PowerPoint on the laptop. But I never tried to play the video from the flash drive. Anyway, it's not a big deal. Okay, other questions?
The carvings, I see on the very left there behind the flags. Again, this is a bigger stone that has.
Yeah.
spots on it, and there were a lot of the other, there was a place where you had this whole pile of stones carved. Are those relatively recent carvings, or do they extend back over a long period of time?
Good question. All I can do is sort of speculate geologically that on that stone, they look really old here.
Yeah.
The ones, the pile of little rocks, those look pretty,
Well, this looks pretty weathered.
yeah, it's pretty weathered, exactly. So I don't know, when was Buddha? I should have researched that. Isn't the Buddha supposed to be, have been alive like 2,500 years ago?
Right,
2,500. And then I don't know when Tibetan Buddhism got established. So probably took some time. So I'm gonna speculate there's stuff that's a few hundred years old, but probably that's about there. Or I'm just speculating. Okay, other questions? Okay, there's no more questions.
Thank you much.
Thank you for being here.
Michael, I want to, before you go, I want to tell you, thank you. These pictures were fascinating, and it's a place in the world that I've never been to. So thank you very much for sharing all those great pictures and telling the stories. And wow, what a different world. Anyway, thank you very much. I really appreciate you putting in the time, and I apologize profusely for being late. And then I also want to tell people the next Armchair Travelers talk will be March 22nd with Russell Heath about his trip sailing around the world. And then the one that we'd had to cancel with Carolyn von Hemmert will be, I believe, April 5th, but look for the flyers. That's about the 4,000-mile trek that she did across Alaska. And she wrote the book, The Sun is a Compass. Anyway, 2 more talks. And thank you again, Michael. That was a fabulous talk.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. And if you know anyone who missed this or any of the other Armchair Traveler series that they would like to see, you can find them on our website, hayneslibrary.org, under the e-learning tab. This one will also get uploaded sometime here in the next week. So thank everyone for being here tonight, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Michael.
Welcome to your seat.